This our new Catholic priest is a devil. Why did you say so? My mind tells me so. Okay, if you say so, let watch and see. If you are just joining us for the first time, kindly hit the subscribe button so you can be notified anytime I drop interesting episodes like this. In the heart of Anambra City, a prominent Catholic Reverend Father, Ojuku, was renowned for his eloquence, charisma, and intelligence. Having studied in the United Kingdom, he was ordained as the Reverend Father of one of the largest Catholic churches in Anambra. His congregation was filled with dignitaries from across the state, drawn by his inspiring sermons and good deeds. However, beneath his virtuous facade, Father Ojuku harbored a dark secret. He would often sneak away to his office, where he would indulge in pornographic videos on his iPad. Whenever a church member knocked on his door, he would hastily hide the device in his drawer. As time passed, Father Ojuku's behavior became increasingly erratic. He started to develop an unnatural interest in Maria, the 13-year-old altar girl and daughter of a widow in his congregation. Whenever Maria came to clean the altar in the evenings, Father Ojuku would summon her to his office, where he would make unsettling comments and advances. Maria felt deeply uncomfortable around Father Ojuku and would often confide in her mother, Mrs. Ada. However, Mrs. Ada would dismiss Maria's concerns, insisting that Father Ojuku was a servant of God and would never engage in such behavior. As the days turned into weeks, Maria found herself trapped in a desperate situation. Father Ojuku's threats to withdraw his support from their family left her feeling helpless and coerced into submitting to his advances. The situation continued to escalate, with Father Ojuku becoming increasingly brazen in his behavior. He would often show Maria his genitals, leaving her feeling traumatized and ashamed. Desperate for a solution, Maria tried to involve her friends, but Father Ojuku would chase them away, claiming they were disturbing his prayers. The truth eventually came to light when Maria's mother discovered that her daughter was pregnant at the age of 13. The news sent shockwaves through the community, and soon the church members were demanding answers. As the scandal unfolded, Father Ojuku's reputation was left in tatters. His congregation turned against him, and he was forced to flee in the dead of night, abandoning his position and his reputation. But the consequences of Father Ojuku's actions would be far-reaching, and the community would never be the same again. As the scandal unfolded, the community found itself in a state of constant unrest. Gossip spread like wildfire, and every corner of the village buzzed with whispered speculations and heated debates. The market square, once a place of joy and bustling activity, now turned into a hub of tension and mistrust. Vendors shouted over each other, trying to peddle their goods, but the real conversation lay beneath the surface. Groups of townsfolk gathered in tight circles, their voices hushed yet urgent. "I can't believe it," Mrs. Neka, the seamstress, said, shaking her head. "Father Ojuku was always so kind. How could he?" "But what if it's true?" interrupted Mr. Chitty, the butcher. "We can't ignore Maria's pain. No child would lie about something like this." "You think he did it?" another asked, eyes wide with disbelief. Chitty's expression hardened. "I think we need to stop protecting men in power and start believing our children." The crowd murmured in agreement, though some faces remained skeptical. The tension in the air was palpable, each person wrestling with their beliefs and loyalties. Back at home, Maria sat on her bed, clutching a small, worn teddy bear, a gift from her late father. The room was dimly lit, the soft glow from a single lamp casting long shadows on the walls. She traced the stitching of the bear with her fingers, lost in thought. A soft knock on the door pulled her from her reverie. It was her younger brother, Kelechi, only 8 years old, peeking through the door. "Maria," he whispered. "Can I come in?" She nodded, and he tiptoed over, climbing onto the bed beside her. "Why is everyone so angry?" he asked innocently. "Did Father Ojuku do something bad?" Maria's throat tightened. How could she explain the complexity of her pain to someone so young? She simply wrapped her arms around him, holding him close. "Sometimes people we trust can hurt us," she said softly. "But it's not your fault, okay?" Kelechi nodded, burying his face into her shoulder. The innocence in his eyes was a stark contrast to the darkness of the situation, a painful reminder of what she had lost. The village elders, a group of respected men and women, convened at the town hall to discuss the growing unrest. Their faces were etched with worry, the weight of their responsibility pressing heavily upon them. "We cannot ignore this any longer," Chief Okonkwo, the oldest among them, declared, slamming his cane on the floor. "If we do not act, our community will crumble." "But what can we do?" Elder Uche asked, wringing his hands. "This scandal has divided us. If we side with Maria, We risk alienating those who still support Father Ojuku. We must seek the truth, said Elder Amara, her voice firm yet compassionate. And we must support Maria and her family. She is a child, a victim. It is our duty to protect her. The room fell silent, each elder lost in thought. The decisions they made in the coming days would shape the future of their community, and the weight of that responsibility was not lost on them. One night, Maria found herself drawn to the churchyard. The place that once felt like a sanctuary now filled her with unease. The moon cast a silvery glow over the gravestones, and the air was thick with the scent of blooming jasmine. She knelt by the small weathered gravestone of her father, tracing the carved letters with her fingers. Tears welled up in her eyes as she whispered, "Papa, I need you. I don't know how to be strong without you." As the wind rustled through the trees, she felt a presence beside her. It was Mrs. Ada, her mother, who had followed her silently. "You don't have to do this alone," Mrs. Ada said, placing a comforting hand on her daughter's shoulder. "We will get through this together." Maria leaned into her mother's embrace, the weight of her grief momentarily lifted. For the first time in weeks, she felt a flicker of hope, a belief that healing was possible. The following Sunday, the church was filled to capacity. The tension was tangible as the congregation awaited the arrival of Father Ojuku's supporters, who had planned a protest. Banners were held high, reading, "Innocent until proven guilty and stand with Father Ojuku." Mrs. Ada, holding Maria's hand tightly, stood near the front, her heart pounding. She knew a confrontation was inevitable. As the protesters entered, led by a group of prominent churchgoers, Mrs. Ada stepped forward, her voice clear and unwavering. "My daughter is not a liar," she declared, her gaze meeting each protester head-on. "Your support for this man only deepens her wounds. She deserves your compassion, not your doubt." A hush fell over the church, the weight of her words sinking in. Slowly, one by one, some of the protesters lowered their banners, shame creeping into their expressions. The division was still there, but the seeds of change had been planted. The power of truth, of standing up for what was right, began to take root in the hearts of the community. The day of Father Ojuku's trial arrived, and the courthouse was packed with villagers. The air was thick with anticipation as Maria took the stand, her hands trembling but her voice steady. She recounted her story with courage, facing her accuser with a strength she didn't know she possessed. The courtroom was silent, every eye fixed on the young girl who had found the bravery to speak her truth. Father Ojuku, sitting in the defendant's chair, looked smaller than he ever had, his once commanding presence diminished by the gravity of his actions. As the judge delivered the verdict, the weight of justice finally lifted the dark cloud that had hung over the community. Father Ojuku was found guilty, and the collective sigh of relief was palpable. With the trial behind them, the community began the slow process of healing. The church implemented new safeguards, ensuring that such a betrayal would never happen again. Support groups were formed, providing a safe space for those who had been hurt to share their stories. Maria, with the help of her family and newfound friends, started to find her voice again. She joined a local theater group, using the stage as a means to express her emotions and reclaim her confidence. One evening, as she performed a heartfelt monologue, the audience rose in applause. Among them was Mrs. Ada, her eyes filled with tears of pride. Her daughter was a survivor, a beacon of hope and resilience. As the curtain fell, Maria stood tall, her heart filled with a sense of empowerment. The road had been long and arduous, but she had emerged stronger. And as she looked out into the audience, she knew that her story was just beginning.